Alright, today I'm going to turn this ash log into this guy's big brother. Ash is becoming endangered in North America due to the emerald ash borer. This tree was tagged by the city of Kansas City, Missouri for monitoring, but it was on a property that was being demolished, and so I was able to get a lot of this tree in big segments before the firewood guys got there and cut it up. I had to, on the site where the tree was removed, I had to cut it in half just to be able to get it in my little truck by myself. I've had it just laying on the ground, cut side down to keep it from drying out for at least a month now because I wasn't able to get to it. So what I'm hoping to get is something that size and 6 inches deep, 8 inches deep maybe. The first step, of course after just getting it carted home, is to just do the bulk of the waste removal from the outside of the log. I'm going around the outside of what will be the bowl, making a series of faceted cuts. This is the Arbortech turbo plane. Goes on a standard 4.5-inch angle grinder, and it does not cut at all on the perimeter. Cuts only on the kind of the corner and then the face and a little bit on the inside. It just excels at contouring, both convex and concave. It's a very dangerous tool. Notice there's no guard on this angle grinder. Terrible idea. Don't do it. I'm accepting the risk of using it like this. I'll wear heavy work gloves. However, if you cannot do the kind of work that I'm doing with the guard on there, it's a physical obstruction to getting in where you need to get to. As I just mentioned, it does not cut at all on the perimeter, and I'll be grabbing only about an inch, inch and a half away from that edge. So I'm very keen on where my hands are at all times and where that blade is. Here's what we got after the turbo plane. And I aim for a very slight, gentle, convex profile over the entirety of the outside. Now, the base for this bowl is way too small, so I'm going to tip it on its side here, like so, and slice off maybe a 2-inch thick piece there to give it a more stable base. The next step is to hollow out the inside, and to do that, the best way I've found is to make so that you can't probably see, but the grains are running this way in this log. So I'm going to make some deep scoring cuts with my chainsaw again, perpendicular-ish to the grain, as deep as I can without feeling like I'm risking cutting too close to the outside of the bowl. And then I'm going to then chop with my hatchet. I'm then going to chop parallel to the grain and pop out a bunch of big chunks. It's a pretty fast, coarse way to get most of that material out of there. This is a knot right here, so it's very tough. Chopping my saw off there. Usually I do this out in the yard, I don't have to worry about ricochets. Okay. Some heavy chisel work. Oh, look at that. There's a nail in there. I did not see that. Thought that was a bug hole. There's a nail right there, which I chopped right through. Yep, I got some big dings in my axe. I don't keep this axe razor sharp for that reason. Let's see how deep that nail goes. See, the nail head is embedded and encapsulated, and I have to try to chisel back down around behind it. I know it doesn't protrude from the bottom side. That's good. Actually, I'm dealing with two nails. Here's the one I saw before, and here's one right here. Look, and I actually cut right through it with my chainsaw. So I'll be sharpening that. And then I was trying to chisel down around behind that, but my thickness isn't real substantial there. So I'm going to try to pull it out with some vice grips. Yeah, the nail head is in there, and it just snapped off. Yep, so I put a score mark as deep as I dared go and as close to the nail with my chainsaw, since it was already dull. And then I came in like this with the chisel and popped this piece out, and it did have the nail head right there. So try the same thing with that guy right there. Got the other one out of there too by chiseling around it. Back to the turbo plane to do the interior contouring and That will get the bowl to about within 99% of its finished shape. We're getting closer, man. That spot right there is super thin where that one nail was. That's it's hard to tell. If I had to guess, it's about 3/8 of an inch thick, but that's approximately the thickness I'm going to be aiming for. A quarter, maybe 3/8 of an inch thick, a 1/4 inch thickness up toward the rim. So I actually have a good bit of roughing out to do yet, but it shows you how fast the turbo plane is at doing what it does, and it's actually very good for refining as well. But I've probably got 2 or 3 times as much time left in the refining as I did in that just hogging out that I just did. But I wanted to be sure that I could get through all the chainsaw marks. There was one spot that was pretty close. I was within a 1/2 inch of the outside with the chainsaw, which is it's closer than I like to get, but I lucked out. It's pretty uneven. Some spots that's an inch thick right here. That's 1/2 inch, feels like. Coming around, it's an inch thick again. That's less than 1/2 inch. That's an inch thick over here. So I've got to very slowly take my time and evenly remove material, and the bottom is way too thick yet as well. It feels like it's over an inch thick, 1.25 inches, my best guess. But I need to bring the sides in a little to follow the profile of the exterior of the bowl a little better. But this shows me at least that I think I've got so far a decent bowl without any major defects that I can see. Now, being from a crotch, this does have this fissure here, but these grains are so strong when they interconnect in this area that I'm not worried about this bowl cracking apart. There's always a risk on any bowl that it will crack when it dries. Ash is the most forgiving wood that I've worked with, and you can even tell that even when an ash tree is fresh cut like this one, it just has far less moisture than some other wood species. Now, one thing I do have to do is anywhere where you are approaching the centermost portion of the growth rings, like right there, this log was sawn in half this direction. So you get these radial cracks. You can see a couple of those little cracks right there. So I'm going to cut that out. So I'll cut that off, and this end, I may do the same right here a little bit, because those cracks have a tendency to migrate further inward if you don't excise them to begin with. But this big one, that just adds character. Yeah, a lot of people like that, and it would be silly to try to cut that whole thing out. There's a crack right here, so I'll need to cut that off. So there'll be a little dip on this side. I can see, yeah. That one's being close to the edge. That would be at risk at just breaking off at some point. So plenty of time, work yet to go. Fatigue is setting in. Alright, I'm probably a little thinner than I would prefer to be on the bottom, but I think I'm still okay. I think I've got right in the center at least ½ inch of thickness there. But and the concern is that later I have to flatten this, and that'll involve taking material away. I don't know if you can see the thickness I'm going for here. Somewhere, it's about 3/8, I think. And I may even take it down a little more later, but fatigue is definitely setting in, and I can't, yeah, like there's a thick spot right here. Yeah, there's a thick spot there, so no matter how good a job I think I'm doing with the gloves on and everything, yeah, there's a thick spot here. I'm just too fatigued to keep going right now, and that's when mistakes happen. So the reason I make these a lot thinner than bowls you see often, and I have several reasons for that. One is, the primary one is that the thinner the material is, the more evenly it can dry. So that, you know, the more volume you have in a chunk of wood relative to its surface area, the more the surface is going to dry out before the interior can dry. And since wood inherently shrinks when it dries and swells when it gets wet, what happens is it cracks open. I don't know if I have a piece handy to illustrate that, but so by making it as thin as possible while still maintaining enough strength to be functional, it can dry more evenly and your risk of cracking is greatly reduced. Another reason is just aesthetically. I think it gives them more of an elegance when they don't look too thick and chunky. Another reason is that on a bowl this size, if it's an inch thick or more throughout, it's quite heavy, and you know, smaller people, you know, little old lady, would you have trouble even picking it up to move it, to clean underneath it or whatever. So those are some of the primary reasons I try to make them pretty thin, although there are some drawbacks to that, and being, of course, the thinner it is, the easier it is to discern differences in thickness. Yeah, it's quite a bit thicker here, and so the harder it is to get it uniform. Also, the thinner you get it, the greater the chance of blowing through to the other side. Or I've even one time had a spot so thin on the bottom of a cherry bowl that if you held it up to bright light, you could see light through it. One last problem if it's too thin is that when it gets wet, it will warp. And sometimes they go back to their original shape when dried, but sometimes they maintain some of that warpage, and that can cause problems like with the bowl sitting flat. So, and on flattening the bottom, it's not so important that the bottom be perfectly flat, just that it not wobble when it's sitting on a flat surface. So actually, on a surface this size, if it only maintained contact on 3 or 4 points, that would be fine as long as it doesn't wobble around. And so I don't try to achieve perfect flatness, and I can even see it has a little bit of a dish this direction. But from here I could, and I may very well just let it dry for a period of months. I'll have to do what's called babysitting, which involves putting it in a garbage bag for most hours of the day, letting it out for an hour or two, a couple times a day, usually when I get up, when I go to bed. Do that for a period of weeks, and gradually let it stay outside the bag for longer until after about a month of the babysitting. It's okay for most types of wood to just let them sit on a shelf and dry for another period of a few months. So ash, a bowl this size, I'll need to give it at least 4 months to dry before I can do the finish work. Oh, that's right. Another reason for making them thin is that the thinner it is, the faster it will reach its moisture equilibrium with the ambient environment. That means the sooner I can get it on the sales table, right? So several good reasons that I've found to get them as thin as reasonably possible. But I may come back out in a day or two after I give my back a chance to rest. Yeah, I can tell this whole section right here, it definitely needs to be removed a little more. So it's a lot easier to do this work when the wood is still wet. The tool cuts much faster. If you wait till it's dry, the tool will chatter and bounce a lot more. And it's just slower. Yeah, it's thicker here. It cuts a lot slower on end grain areas. Like this is an area of end grain. So over here, right there, that is just, yeah, not even a 1/4 inch thick right where that nail was. And it's a little thicker on this one, but I left it kind of as a hole. It looks just like a knot hole. There she is. And because I like to keep it real, here is the mess from that one, roughing out that one bowl. So here are the offcut pieces. Here's your size reference. And the debris field. Stretching across pretty much the whole patio.